Who will win the UK general election? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Now, here's a thought.
Does Keir Starmer make you calmer, or fill you with dread and drama? Does Rishi render you all squishy, or sense Tories are flawed and fishy? Does Ed Davey make you light and wavy, or just feel like lumpy old gravy? Does Richard Tice appear neat and nice, or look like a bucket of cold rice? Does listening to Nigel Farage provide a mental massage, or give you a media barrage with his entourage? It's time for you to decide. Yes, all those residents of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak has called a surprise general election. Yes, it's Thursday, the 4th of July. Interesting date.
Soon.
Now, the fact is that the Prime Minister made the announcement in an unusual circumstances. There he was, standing at the podium in a rain-soaked speech outside number 10 Downing Street. What an endearing image that was. Well, this surprise move overturned expectations of an autumn poll. Many thought that this would go much further than expected, but it did catch certainly his opposition out on the hop. Nevertheless, as Keir Starmer said, it's time for change and away from the Tory chaos. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, what is your opinion of the decision of Rishi Sunak, and whatever happened to his rain-soaked suit?
Yes, well, it did genuinely seem to be a sudden decision. I read various claims which appear to emanate from the Conservative Party headquarters, saying that he'd been planning it for months, and this was just a clever reveal that he was actually going to go, in July. But various things mitigate against that thought, particularly certain things being put in place, like when are the planes going to Rwanda? His policy to help with the illegal immigration. When are people going to go there? Well, it's after the election, so therefore he doesn't get any bounce from it or any sort of benefit from it. So it seems that he was pushed into it, really. I've heard from various sources, including Mike Graham from Talk Radio, who said he had a source saying that, in fact, it was due to Nigel Farage saying he was going to lead. He was planning to lead the Reform Party and to go to try and become an MP. But in going quickly, Nigel Farage, who has been out of frontline politics for some time, was caught out, and with only 6 weeks to start campaigning, hasn't done it. Now, I don't think that Nigel Farage was ever going to do it, but it's still possible that Rishi Sunak thought he was. So that may have been part of his calculus. But the overall effect of this is it just seemed like desperation, especially in being out in the rain. They've got a really good studio in number 10 Downing Street, and he could have gone into there had he got it ready, but presumably he hadn't got it ready and he just went for it. Something spurred him into action to do it. He was desperate. It could have been a combination of things. It could have been that. It could have been all the I think 80 is the figure, isn't it, of Tory MPs not standing again.
Correct.
And it could have been the fact that there's the optics of people coming over illegally into the country in boats during the summer. He wanted to do that, go to the electorate before that happened. Maybe it was a whole concatenation of things, and suddenly he thought, right, I'm going now. Don't stop me. And he's so it felt like desperation, and I think it was. It might just work.
Well, will it, or is his political career washed up? Well, let's see. The fact of the matter is that there is some slight positive news. There isn't much, but I mean, the inflation figures were lower than perhaps some had expected. So that's definitely a positive. Does that really inspire the electorate? Perhaps not. When it comes to the big matters, it seems that it was a strange decision. And you have to cast your mind back not that long ago, a few weeks, which is off the back of some very bad local elections. This
Yeah.
is the council elections, folks, for those international listeners, those who typically vote for their councillors, who run their communities. And they're all over the country. But the fact of the matter is the Tories, the Conservative government, really were hit very hard. And it was a major win for particularly Labour. Now, I think that the point here is that Rishi Sunak was always in an ignominious position. He only had a certain runway, let's say 6 to 8 months. He had to make a decision. But it was a very strange decision. It seemed to be very reactionary. What I think is the key measure of the reactionary part is the response to those 80 MPs who are no longer going to stand with the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And one of which is a very prominent one, which is Michael Gove. And he actually, as we all know, had been running for leadership in previous contests, possibly even thought possibly as a future leader of the Tories after the general election. But nevertheless, he's made it clear that he doesn't want to stand again. Former Prime Minister Theresa May has said that she's not going to stand. So there's many of them.
It's important to note that we're talking about not standing even for an MP. They're not going to be in leadership. Yeah.
Some people might be crying, thank goodness for that. But, but nevertheless, here's the thing. Because if I look back at political elections and governments who, in bygone days, every era has challenges. We all know that, whether they're economic ones, whether they're in mainland issues, whether it be on the NHS, etc. We seem to be at a point where we do have crisis in multiple areas. But what is the key thing here is, as many political commentators have said, they can't tell the difference between Labour and the Conservatives. And in fact, although Keir Starmer is now bringing out some of his pledges, maybe this is where Rishi Sunak has thought, hold on, there isn't enough runway to really get into the depth of what your pledges are. These are the 6 pledges that Keir Starmer is already starting to put out into his campaigning. But 6 weeks is a very short period of time to have a runway to get to the election. There is another factor as well. Now, I'm not suggesting that this was in his thinking, but it has been an observation. And it may not be that obvious to people. It's football. Why? Because this is actually running into the European Nations Championship, which, of course, is going to be held in Germany, and England will be there. And so many people might be slightly distracted, meaning will they have the same turnout? So maybe there's the gamble that in certain very tight communities where there is, a possible that it's going to, be very difficult for Labour to do a major swing of 10, 20%. If the turnout is not high, then it's possible the Tories could still get back in, meaning that they may not necessarily win with a massive majority. But I think that the general consensus is this. The Tories have lost their way. Every major reporting, whether it be the Rwanda deal, as you're talking about, whether it be about the economy, whether it be about the NHS, whether it be about issues, foreign trade not coming to fruition in the same way that they'd like. I mean, we know that the UK came out of recession. It just scraped by the skin of its teeth. It was that tight. And so really it's not great news. But I think it's a big gamble. Clergyman Pete, if you had to gamble and make a guess at what the outcome will be, what's your sense of what will happen come the 5th of July when all of the votes are starting to add up? Who do you think will be in Parliament running the nation?
Well, I will reply directly to that, but just before that, if you're on the sporting idea, of course, it's the Olympics over in Paris.
Well, that too, yeah.
Just a bit later. Now, of course, I don't think that's going to affect turnout because it's afterwards, but you can ride the wave of patriotic fervour by, as Prime Minister. So maybe that was part of his calculus as well. Well, all the odds are saying that it's going to be a Labour victory. And I just have this suspicion that they're going to really, really mess it up. And the reason I think they're going to mess it up is what is generally called woke, because the Labour Party leadership are woke. They're going for these social trends, which at the majority of the country either have no idea what you're talking about when you talk about them, to do with things like well, the big one at the moment is transgenderism, but there are various different strange societal changes which have happened out in the public, but people generally in the public don't know what on earth's going on. They're not going to be persuaded to vote for someone who's going down that route. For example, to pick transgenderism again, someone who can't say what a woman is, which was Keir Starmer's problem. Yeah. And he still maintains that there are some women who have penises. And, I did O-level biology, and I'm pretty sure it was mentioned that they didn't. So it's a problem. And so I think they'll mess it up. Now, I still think they're going to win, though. I think I just think it'll be close. I think it will be quite close.
Well, the interesting thing is that there's some interesting ideas that both parties are putting onto the table here for the electorate to consider. So if we take Keir Starmer, he has said that he would give the vote to younger people, meaning at the moment you have to be 18 years of age and older. He's saying, well, if you can fight for your country at the age of 16, 16-year-olds will now be given the vote. I mean, my view on that is I do understand that there was always a philosophy that if you could fight for your country, you should have a vote. And I don't disagree with that with the lens of history. But today, hopefully, touch wood, we don't have a world war. We don't have major crisis on that scale. Giving the vote to a 16-year-old, to me, is flawed. I think he's calculated thinking that the majority of young people will vote Labour. But either way, I think it's, for somebody who's still at school, not having had any commercial experience or life experience at that age, I think it's a flawed idea. And this is what does worry me, that politicians are very good at thinking about how to incentivize the electorate to come in and say, that's for me. But what I don't see is a real solid plan of how they're going to restructure the NHS, how they're going to drive innovation and investment in manufacturing, in skills, boosting the economy, solving the problems, of course, with our borders. They talk about it generically, but I don't see anything tangible as a robust policy. Similarly, again, the other big ones which are on the table, which is about where investment goes and support in places like the war in Ukraine. And is that something that we should be playing at now? And so there's lots of other things. And there's one other dynamic which is interesting. And I wonder whether Rishi Sunak has sort of thought this in his plan. The United States of America. They're going to, in a campaign, they're already in that mode now. Now, of course, the election in the UK will be well before that because it'll be in July. But is there a dotted line here in the sense of, does Rishi Sunak have a better place on the stage with somebody like Donald Trump if he were to win? Is that the gamble? So I think that there's some play behind the scenes in thinking, well, on an international stage, is it better to be with the Tories as opposed to the Labour Party? Yes. And I think that there is something in that, and I just wanted to capture that. What are your thoughts on the international level?
Well, certainly, with the way that it's going in America, it does look like Donald Trump is going to win and become president again, and therefore you'll see a shift to the right in America. Labour would see. Well, I was going to say a shift. It is a shift to the left, a shift towards the social type of Marxism that I was describing earlier, which Donald Trump stands against. So, it would be difficult for a Labour leader, for Keir Starmer, to form a good, close relationship with Donald Trump, I would say. And with Keir Starmer, I guess it's possible. But he's the sort of squishy left-wing Tory is Rishi Sunak that Donald Trump would regard with some suspicion. Not to say he might regard him as just a little bit weak.
Yes. Well, that's possible.
Might be correct to that. I mean, I think the problem with this election is we have two big parties. One of them's going to win, probably Labour. but I think that they'll squeak home.
Well,
it may not even be an
let me
overall
ask the other question, which we have to cover,
Yes,
which is
go ahead.
the smaller parties,
Yeah,
the Liberal Democrats, and of course Reform. So many people internationally probably wouldn't really know Reform that well.
yeah.
It's something that partly for the fact, of course, they've never held any parliamentary candidate, and more importantly is that they look like they're too far behind in the polls to be able to even get to electing an MP. So let's start with Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Do you feel that they will have some influence, whether it be in Scotland or other parts, like the south of England, whether they do have some traction?
There are some places where they've got a good ground game.
Yes.
So they've got and in those areas they have councillors, then they have people knocking on doors. So and in those areas they have chances of getting some MPs, but there's no way they're going to win. I don't think they're going to. In fact, I think because of the nature of the election, in that people are screaming out for change, but then some people are terrified of Labour because of the reasons I outlined. The smaller parties will be squeezed even more, I believe. So I don't see, apart from their particular areas where they've got influence because they've got the ground game, as I referred to it. They're okay. Now, if you go to Reform UK, they haven't even got that.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'll get an MP.
No. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Although I think they could possibly tip the balance one way or the other, depending on where they stand. So I think they may have some influence from that perspective.
Yes, that's what you mean. Yeah, they'll take votes. Maybe more likely, I would say, away from, despite their claims to the contrary, more likely away from Labour than Conservative.
Well, I still have the biggest question of all.
No, the other way around.
Well,
so
indeed.
More likely away from Conservative than Labour, so they're more likely to give it to Labour, yeah.
So as we sort of conclude, we're sort of heading towards the big conclusion that Labour is going to win, but I still want to know what on earth has happened to the rain-soaked suit from old Squishy Rishi.
Well, I think what we could say is if this fails, he can at least put it up for auction and maybe make some money. Having said that, he doesn't need money, does he?
That's true.
So, but it'd be interesting to know. Ring it out and start again. That's what I'm saying. But yes, what do you think? Gentle listener, let us know. Make sure you get in touch with the show. Just leave a comment under this episode, wherever you're watching or listening to us. But for this week, it's goodbye for me, goodbye for Mark, and catch you next time.